Welcome to Butch's Building Blocks. Let's take some black walnut and some maple, and let's turn it into a beautiful honeycomb cutting board. The final size of our cutting board is going to be approximately 12 by 16 inches. We're going to use maple and black walnut. For the maple, we're going to start out with 8 strips, 12 inches by 2 inches by 7/8. Black walnut, we're going to need 8 strips at 12 by 2 by 3/16 of an inch. And then again with black walnut, 16 strips, 12 by 1 1/4 by 1 1/8. The maple strips we have to cut at a 30-degree angle in order to get our honeycomb shape. We have our 2-inch starting dimension. Both of these sides are 30-degree angles. All 3 of these flats will be 1 inch. In order to get 1 inch, you need to start out with 7/8 of an inch stock. I've cut 4 pieces of maple, which we're going to get 2-inch rips out of. So that'll give us the 8 that we need. Preset my fence and saw width so that inside of the tooth to the fence is 2 inches. So let's cut up some of our stock. I went to my veneer stock and pulled out 3/16 and 1/8 inch veneer for our usage here. So I have 8 of the wider ones, 16 narrows, and then 8 of the pieces of maple. We're now going to take this thicker stock, 3/16, and glue it onto each piece of maple. Our 8 pieces of maple, our 8 pieces of veneer. Let's glue them on, clamp them up. Okay, let's let them sit for a couple hours and dry, and then we'll move on to cutting our 30-degree angle. You have your black walnut glued. After you have your black walnut glued onto your maple, set your saw blade for a 30-degree angle and get ready to rip those edges off. After you get done cutting your 30-degree angles, there's going to be some variation in that cut. So build yourself a jig with your 30-degree angles here, so that you can set your block in place. And now this is parallel to your sanding drum. And then just lightly take off any wobble that there might be from the cut. That way when you go to laminate that extra piece of black walnut here, it will reduce any gaps that you might have to fill later. In order to glue this next portion of your honeycomb cutting board up, you need to have an elevated platform because we're going to put vertical clamps on it, so you need to be able to get underneath. You're also going to need 2 pieces of scrap wood cut at a 30-degree angle. And the last thing you're going to need is a spacer that will fit underneath of your honeycomb piece. We're going to put glue on both edges of that, bring these in, and then clamp it down. That spacer will allow these side pieces to sit just below it so that you can trim them off flush and have a perfect joint. I already have a piece in here with glue on both sides. Now we come to the clamp. Generally, you need to be careful about vertical and horizontal pressure so this doesn't slide. In this case, we want to make sure that this is down first before we bring the sides in. Okay, let's go through the glue up procedure here. Put in one of your laminates up against one of the 30-degree angles that you've cut. And then let's glue both sides here. Here's our green spacer that I'm using. Place that in there. Put your first piece on top. Try and make that spacer in the center. Take your second piece. Put that there. Check for the alignment to make sure it's down the center, because now we're going to put vertical pressure on these first. You want to be sure that you have good vertical pressure. You don't want this block being pushed up when we apply horizontal pressure. Now, I do recommend using a clamp that has threads on it so that you can get really good vertical and horizontal compression. The easy clamps are really nice, and we're going to use some of them. I want to make sure that we got a lot of pressure going. At this point in time, your blocks should look like this. You can see that they're proud on this side and that they're proud here. You need to get rid of these prominences. Either you can cut them down on a hand plane or you can run them through your drum sander until all of these surfaces are the same. When you're finished, it should look something like this. This one does need a little more sanding, but I stopped the process so I could video it. Using your same support shelf that's raised up, glue these pieces up in sets of 2 or 3 in this orientation, and then, as before, clamp them down tightly to minimize slippage. I've never been able to not get these boards to slide a fraction, 30 seconds or more. But if you can keep it down to a minimum, it keeps the total thickness of your board in line with itself. After gluing everything up, take off any excess glue that you have and then run it through your drum sander till both of these surfaces have no bumps in them. Run this through the drum sander and it's nice and smooth. Now it's time to cut off 1-inch segments. I've preset my saw sled with a 1-inch stop. Remember, when you cut these 1-inch slices, keep them in the order that you cut them, because when we turn them to face each other, your first cell will be a mirror image of itself. We ended up with 10 slices, so let's see what our pattern looks like. That's what it'll look like pretty much. Once we get done, we still have to cut and glue and everything else to get it to look the way we really want it to. At this point, I like to number all of my blocks so that when I'm sanding them and getting them finished up, that I don't lose my sequence. When it comes to gluing up these pieces, I like to glue up sets of 2 first. Once those are glued up, glue them up a set of 4, and then finish them all up together. This seems to make all of these intersecting joints line up better than trying to glue up all of them at one time. After you get all of your pieces glued up, there's going to be some shifting in a vertical direction. There's just nothing you can do about it. Run it through your drum sander until both sides are nice and smooth. After you've sanded it, then take a look. And you can see right here that there is a gap. And there's a couple more like that. If you have a dental instrument, it works really well. You kind of pick that out. And then you're just going to have to fill that in. You can fill it in with a little Titebond 3 with some black walnut dust, or you can put black walnut dust onto it and then use some CV glue to lock it in place. With so many joints and so many pieces coming together, just be prepared. You're going to have a couple cracks that you're going to need to fill. Once you've got your cracks repaired, now it's time to cut these tips off so that we have a nice square board. With the tips cut off, now we have a nicely balanced board that's easily sanded, and it'll make routing these edges over very easy. Okay, we sanded it to 220 grit, put a 1/4 inch round over on all the sides. Now we're ready for a little bit of cutting board oil. Wow, it really makes the black walnut pop, gives that yellow honeycomb center look from the maple. Here's our finished product, a beautiful honeycomb cutting board made out of black walnut and maple. This project turned out very well. Lots of people love this type of a cutting board. It should be a good seller for you.